everyone, welcome to my channel. Friends, before going into the details of the war, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell. Please support by subscribing and turning on the notification bell. We are a strong community. Russians suffer heavy losses near Pavlivka. Enemy conscripts surrender to Ukrainian forces. Fierce fighting continues in the Donetsk sector of the Bakhmut and Avdiivka axes, while in Luhansk Oblast active fighting is ongoing near Bilohorivka and Novoselivka, a military spokesman said on Ukrainian national television on November 9. Spokesman of the East grouping of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Serhiy Cherevati said that Russian forces are constantly conducting assault actions, including 5 recent attacks on the strategic city of Bakhmut. Cherevati added that the Russian invasion troops had again suffered significant losses near Pavlivka, the scene of fierce fighting earlier, with more than 80 Russian servicemen being killed and 60 more wounded. According to Cherevati, the Russian military did not succeed in its attacks on any of the axes and were repulsed by the Ukrainian armed forces. Cherevati also said there had been surrenders of mobilized Russians. On November 7, 20 Russian troops surrendered in Luhansk Oblast. Over the past few days, there have been reports of devastating losses of the invading Russian forces in Ukraine. In particular, the defeat of one of the Marine brigades near Pavlivka in Donetsk Oblast, and the destruction of a battalion of untrained Russian mobilized soldiers near Svatov in Luhansk Oblast. According to the General Staff, 780 enemy troops were killed in Ukraine over the past day. Russia probably lost half its tanks in war against Ukraine, says U.S. official. Russia has probably lost half its main battle tanks and used up most of its precision-guided weapons in a war that has become a massive strategic failure for the Kremlin, a senior Pentagon official has said. U.S. news channel CNN quoted Pentagon's Under-Secretary of Defense for Policy, Colin Kahl, as saying on November 8 that Russian dictator Vladimir Putin had bogged down more than 80% of the Russians' land forces in Ukraine. Putin has failed, Kahl told a group of reporters during an event held by George Washington University's Project for Media and National Security. Kahl said Russia has suffered tens of thousands of casualties since the war began in February, which is orders of magnitude more than the Soviet Union suffered in Afghanistan. They've spent down a majority of their precision-guided munitions in Ukraine, and the sanctions and export controls will make it very difficult for them to rebuild their military to what it looked like before the war. According to Kahl, Putin went into this war trying to extinguish Ukraine as an independent, sovereign democratic country. He's failed, and that's not going to change, the official said. Russian journalist Koloziv added to wanted list over post about war in Ukraine. Russia's Interior Ministry added Dmitry Koloziv, the chief editor of the online newspaper Republic, to its wanted list on November 9, saying he is a suspect in an unspecified case. Media reports quoted sources at the ministry as saying that the case against Koloziv, who is currently in Lithuania, was launched over a post he made about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Reports say Koloziv is accused of discrediting Russia's armed forces and may face up to 10 years in prison if convicted. Republic's website was blocked days after Russia attacked Ukraine in February. To read the original story from RFE/RL's Russian service, Russia says U.S. may influence Kyiv's decision to start talks with Moscow. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Zakharova says Washington has no desire to encourage Kyiv to constructive moves. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman said on Wednesday that the U.S. may influence Ukraine to start peace talks with Russia. What is missing is Washington's aspiration to encourage the Kyiv regime to do something constructive. The goal is different. The goal is destructive, Maria Zakharova said in an interview with Sputnik Radio. According to Zakharova, Ukraine is forbidden to have peace talks with Russia. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Tuesday that respect to the UN Charter, compensation for losses, are conditions for starting peace talks with Russia. The Russian officials, including President Vladimir Putin, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and his deputies keep manifesting their openness for the talks with Kyiv without preconditions. Villages and towns in Ukraine see heavy fighting, shelling Kyiv, Ukraine, AP. Villages and towns in Ukraine saw more heavy fighting and shelling Wednesday as Ukrainian and Russian forces strained to advance on different fronts after more than 8.5 months of war. At least 9 civilians were killed and 24 others were wounded in 24 hours, the Ukrainian president's office said. It accused Russia of using explosive drones, rockets, heavy artillery and aircraft to attack 8 regions in the country's southeast. Ukrainian and Russian forces also clashed overnight over Snihurivka, a town about 50 kilometers, 30 miles, north of the southern city of Kherson. Ukraine's army hopes to reclaim the Russian-occupied city, the only regional capital captured during Moscow's February 24 invasion and a key target of an ongoing counteroffensive. Kirill Stremisov, the deputy head of the Kherson region's Kremlin-appointed administration, said in a telegram post that the Ukrainian army had gained a foothold along a railway line in Snihurivka's north. In a separate post, he claimed Russian forces had repulsed the Ukrainian advance. The Kherson region is one of 4 provinces of Ukraine that Russian President Vladimir Putin illegally annexed and subsequently placed under Russian martial law. The Russian military has concentrated much of its firepower on securing control of the others, Luhansk, Donetsk and Zaporizhia. Earlier this week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reiterated that the return of all occupied territory was a condition for any peace talks with Russia. The Kremlin is unlikely to give up its internationally unrecognized claim to the regions annexed in September or to Crimea, which Russia seized from Ukraine in 2014. The president's office said widespread Russian strikes on Ukraine's energy system continued. 2 cities not far from Europe's largest nuclear power plant were shelled overnight, it said. More than 20 residential buildings, an industrial plant, a gas pipeline and a power line were reportedly damaged in Nikopol, which lies across the Dnieper River from the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Further west, in the Dnipropetrovsk region, the Ukrainian governor reported massive, overnight strikes with exploding Iranian-made drones that wounded 4 energy company workers in the city of Dnipro. Attacks on civilian infrastructure are war crimes in themselves. The Kremlin is at war with Ukrainian civilians, trying to leave millions of people without water and light, for them, to freeze in the winter, Governor Valentin Reznichenko said on Ukrainian TV. In a related development, a senior Russian security official arrived in Iran for high-level talks late on Tuesday, Russian media reported. News of the trip by Nikolai Patrushev, secretary of the powerful Russian Security Council chaired by Putin, came days after Tehran admitted that it had supplied Moscow with the explosive-laden drones, after weeks of official denials. A Washington-based think tank linked Patrushev's visit to likely discussions over the possible sale of Iranian surface-to-surface ballistic missiles to Russia. The Institute for the Study of War said late Tuesday that the Kremlin was continuing efforts to covertly acquire munitions for use in Ukraine, to mitigate the effects of international sanctions and backfill Russia's ongoing depletion of domestic munitions stockpiles. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.